Let's dive a little deeper into this matchup with Ole Miss and Auburn. We kind of started that conversation before the break, just a couple of minutes. Couple of things. If you start going through all 64 pages of the SEC stats packet, your eyes will go cross-eyed. I mean, like you'll just start swimming. But I do think there's some things that stand out. And I don't know if you guys are more interested in total offense, total defense, or scoring offense, scoring defense. I tend to gravitate toward scoring numbers because we got a scoreboard, and ultimately that's the stat that matters the most. Ole Miss is third in the SEC. They are averaging 39.67 points per game. If you're rounding up, that's 40 a game. Auburn is averaging 20.33 points per game. If you're rounding, again, that's 20 points per game. So Ole Miss, in terms of scoring offense, is 20 points per game better than Auburn this year. Auburn, through 6 games, has scored 15 touchdowns, and they've kicked 6 field goals. Ole Miss, through 6 games, has scored 32 touchdowns, and they have kicked 4 field goals. So there's scoring offense. Scoring defense. Ole Miss is third in the SEC. They're giving up 14.5 points per game. Auburn is 11th. They're giving up 25 points a game. 19 touchdowns allowed for Auburn this season, 10 touchdowns allowed for Ole Miss. Now, are the schedules identical? Of course they're not. Auburn had Penn State in the non-conference. They played Georgia last weekend, right? So that's going to lead a little bit to some of the imbalance. But the sample size at this point is big. We're halfway through the season for almost all of college football. Everybody in the SEC but Tennessee is at the halfway point of their year. You got several teams that have got an open date this weekend. Tennessee had theirs a little early. They've only played 5 games so far. So we have gotten to the point where the sample size for this year is big enough to matter. So I'll kind of open it up to you guys. It's easy to say the only thing that's interesting about Auburn right now is the future of their program in terms of who the head coach is going to be. And I think universally people believe that Brian Harsin is not going to be the head coach at Auburn next year. Like, if you can find somebody that believes he is going to be, then you have found a unicorn. The question is, how long is he going to be the head coach? Will it be the remainder of the season? Will it happen after this week? But let's take it a step beyond that. Let's not just stop at the surface level. That can't be the only thing that stands out for you at Auburn. Is there anything about Auburn that stands out in a positive way?
They're not terrible defensively. They're good. They're pretty good defensively. Derek Hall is a really good football player. They have some talent up front. They were up 14-0 on Missouri. They were up 17-0 on LSU, and they just can't hold on because in the second half they can't do anything offensively. But I won't be totally surprised if they come out of the gate and do some things and rock Ole Miss a little bit, and then in the end Ole Miss just takes over and wins.
Can I cheat and say that this game and what's interesting about the actual football game absent Brian Harsin, I think really centers around Ole Miss and how they play? Because regardless of, there's a State fan out there listening that thinks Ole Miss is just terrible, right? So taking away that, a team that is ranked in the top 10 has, I'll be very tame here to not piss that person off, has very high expectations. When you're at the halfway point and you're 6-0, there are a lot of things that are on the table for you. Before you laugh, they do control their own destiny in the SEC West, in the SEC, in the playoff. I know, but they do. An Access Bowl is absolutely on the table for this team, and another historic season. Recruiting, they've got big-time players in town this weekend. There's a lot still that is on the line for Ole Miss. And so if they are any of those things, if they are really a top 10 team, if Lane Kiffin is the guy that's turning the program from a team that has flashes in the pans to a consistent national contender, all that. You win this game, and you win it rather comfortably. At least you should. And so what I'm interested in is how Ole Miss plays. Because I've seen people say things like, oh, they haven't played a complete game all season. First of all, that's not true. They have one. That's one more than zero. But it's about how they play. Do they actually come out focused and energized and execute and then continue that through the first, second, and third and fourth quarters of a football game against what you think is a lesser, albeit talented opponent? Can Jackson Dart not have the vomit plays like he had in the first half in Nashville when he threw for 450 yards? Can you do that? Are you done with the offensive line shuffling? Are you more solid there with positions and who's where? Are the snaps going to be good? Defensively, are you going to be physical for 4 quarters instead of just 2 like you were last week? I think everything interesting about this game settles on, in my opinion, how Ole Miss plays, how Jackson Dart plays, and how they look. Because if they are as good as you think they are, they need to start looking like it for entire games. Because you can't, as Lane Kiffin said at halftime, going into the locker room, he said they screwed around. And he was right. I mean, they did. They clearly were playing with their food. They were screwing around, for lack of a better phrase. You can't screw around this Saturday. You can't screw around against Arkansas. You can't screw around against Texas A&M. You sure can against Alabama and Mississippi State. Complete games have to begin this week. So I'm fascinated to see if Ole Miss is able to put one of those together for the second time this season.